Hello.
Hey, Dr. Reba.
How are you?
I am well. How are you?
Very good. Thank you.
Awesome, awesome. So we're just going to wait a few moments as people come in.
Sounds good.
Sometimes we move on CP time, so you know. So they're coming slowly but surely. Hmm. Hi, Lauren. Welcome. We will be getting started in the next 5 minutes. I'm glad. Lauren, Dr. Reba
Nice.
is a doctor originally from Minnesota. She is in Georgia right now, but I'm excited too. She's going to
Mhm.
teach us affordable, healthy ways to eat. So I'm excited about that because I know there's always that myth. It takes too much to eat healthy. It costs too much. So
Mhm. Mhm.
Dr. Reba said she has something for us. So I'm excited about that. Um, and just a few topics that we're going to talk about. I'm excited. So I'm right there with you, Lauren. Hi, Noel. Okay, 2 more minutes and then we'll get started. I don't know if you've put your phone on silent or do not disturb, but you may want
It
to do
is.
that.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. I love to give me those calls right when I'm getting started. I'm like,
Exactly.
it's amazing. It's amazing. Oh, wow. One of my colleagues just sent me a email, and there's a women's business conference for
Mm-hmm.
mental, emotional, and physical wellness. And
Oh,
the
nice.
featured speaker is Taraji. Yeah.
Wow. Nice.
So
Yeah, I
I'm
went
going
to
to
her
mention that
conference
to you.
last year. Nice.
Did
Yes,
you?
so she had, it was called Can We Talk? It was amazing. So yeah, that was a really great conference. She had Dr. Joy DeGruy was one of the speakers, if you've ever heard of
Okay.
her. So she wrote a book called Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome. And it pretty much talks about just sort of the psychological aftermath of just sort of the legacy of slavery in America.
Wow.
So she was
Wow.
amazing. Um, and yeah, they had
Sure.
speakers from all over the country.
That sounds phenomenal. That sounds phenomenal. I love when Taraji speaks, especially
Mm-hmm.
about mental health and wellness. She's so passionate.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And I know she said she was doing something during this time for um,
Mm-hmm.
mental health, but I mean, sis hopped
Yeah,
on it.
she
Like,
is. She is. She's providing, it's almost like a voucher program. So psychotherapists can be connected with individuals who are seeking counseling. And I think they get four, like vouchers for 4 sessions free of charge. So it's really
that
awesome.
That's phenomenal. And then Dr. Joy. Are you familiar with Dr. Joy? She's out in Georgia as well. She does
Yes,
something
therapy
therapy
for
for
Black
Black women.
girls. Uh-huh. Mm-hmm.
Yes, yes,
Uh-huh.
yes. She was on live today, and I spoke with her, and she was talking about how she has a database. So if you are
Mm-hmm.
looking for a therapist that specializes and wants to work with Black women, you can go onto her
Mm-hmm.
database as well.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a good source to use there. Love Dr. Joy.
Mm-hmm.
She is a joy. That's funny. Names work
Right.
perfectly because she is a joy. So we are going to go ahead and get started.
Sounds good.
Hi, everyone. Awesome. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in. I am Maxie Taylor, your host tonight, and I am here with the phenomenal Dr. Reba Peoples. We will be discussing how food can affect your mood. But with it being such a timely thing, we're going to, I don't want to give too much away, but discuss several other things. And we're going to bring you guys soul food this time. So
Mm.
it's Food for Your Mood 2.0, the soul food version. I love that. Dr. People said that. Dr. Reba said that. And I absolutely love it. Um, Dr. Reba is originally from Ohio, and she then moved to Minnesota.
Mm-hmm.
She is now in Georgia. So, Dr. Reba, how are you doing tonight?
Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm doing as well as can be expected given everything that's happening in the country. But I'm blessed. So.
Exactly,
Mm-hmm.
exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Um, just in case this is something that may need to be played back, this week, our brother George
Mm-hmm.
was brutally murdered, um, unfortunately, in front of bystanders. And now people are rioting in the streets of Minnesota. Um, Dr. Reba, this is something that grief is something that we've been dealing
Mm-hmm.
with since the beginning of 2020, I would say first with Kobe Bryant, then with our sister Brianna,
Mm-hmm.
our brother Ahmad, and now our brother George. So it just seems
Mm-hmm.
like we're dealing with a lot back to back to back, Dr. Joy.
Right.
Help us just kind of navigate that and break that down if you could for us.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I mean, definitely, this is a stressful time for all of us. So we know that with COVID-19, Black people are being impacted disproportionately. So we tend to bear the burden of not only infections, but really negative outcomes of those infections and even deaths. So we're really disproportionately impacted in terms of people who actually die from having COVID-19. So I think that in combination with all of the shootings and the other stressors that are happening in our lives have really made it very difficult. So people are certainly in a state of grief right now, and it's so important that we do come together as community so that we do recognize that we're not alone in this and we're not isolated. So one of the unfortunate things about quarantine is that we've all been sort of sheltering in place on our own, alone in our homes. So this is the time when it's more important than ever to make sure that we are connected and reaching out to people and checking on people and making sure that we're okay.
Exactly. And there are some people who this has really impacted them. I actually talked to one of my brothers and he said, I'm an extrovert, Max. I love hugging
Mm-hmm.
people and being around people and, I love the community aspect. So this shelter in place has really been hard.
Mm-hmm.
So to see what happened on top of an already sticky situation for me, he said, I'm really, really feeling the impacts of it. And so for
Mm-hmm.
people who aren't extroverts, for people who aren't used to reaching out because we had such access to those people, those introverts, how can
Mm-hmm.
they reach out to people in a way where it's like without making them cringe?
And I think being honest, so just really picking up the phone or writing an email or sending a text message and just saying, hey, I'm thinking about you. I would love to connect, or even just saying, I'm feeling lonely, I'd like to talk to someone. And I think that it's really important to be able to get in touch with those emotions, because it's really not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of strength to be able to recognize what you need, and to directly ask for it. So, Grandma said, closed mouth don't get fed. So you have to be willing to speak what it is that you need so that you can get that support.
Yeah. And that's a phenomenal point. Closed
Mm-hmm.
mouths don't get fed. And
Mm-hmm.
so we see people, and there is one aspect of people, well, everybody I think is wondering, what do we do
Mm-hmm.
next?
Right.
There's one side that is like, okay, so I'm going to be vocal and I'm going to make posts on social media.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to write my think
Mm-hmm.
piece, and for creatives, that's phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
And then there are other valiant people who, have spirit of our ancestors of Malcolm X and stuff, and they want to get on the grounds and they want to
Mm-hmm.
be there, and that's phenomenal. But for those
Mm-hmm.
people who are kind of in between,
Mm-hmm.
uh, what would you suggest that we do? Because I can't, leave
Mm-hmm.
my boys and my family and say, all right, guys, I'm going on the front lines,
Mm-hmm.
but I do feel that it's my duty to help. So,
Right.
Dr. Reba,
Right.
how,
Mm-hmm.
what, and how can I do that? What can I do to do that?
Right. And I think it's important to really um, recognize that you're helping right now. So just with this live series that you're doing, you're being able to bring important information to people. So that is helping. And for other people, really recognizing that we do have power in this situation. So really coming at things from a place of power rather than a place of fear. I think because these things have happened so frequently, a lot of times people start to feel hopeless or feel like there's really nothing that can be done. But you can certainly call Hennepin County Attorney Mike Freeman's office and demand that these officers be arrested. You can call Attorney General Keith Ellison. You can call the Minnesota governor, Governor Walz. So really letting people know the outrage that you're feeling right now, and that there's an expectation that they will hold these officers accountable. Long term, really thinking about being involved publicly, so not sleeping on those local elections. So I think a lot of times people, they'll vote for the national election, but sort of sleep on the local elections. But those local county, those local elected officials are the ones that really dictate day to day what happens. So people who are in elected positions are the ones who ultimately make these decisions that impact our lives. So we have to know what their agendas are. We have to know what they stand for, and really find and elect people that do have integrity and that are going to have our needs in mind.
Wow, wow. And that's phenomenal. I know so many people are on one or the other side when it comes to voting, but one of my friends, she's very serious about that and very passionate. And she was like, Max, you have that responsibility. You have children. You are
Mm-hmm.
responsible for making sure that the right people are implementing rules and laws
Right.
and,
Mm-hmm.
allocating money on your behalf and your children's behalf. You better make sure that you know what
Mm-hmm.
they're doing. You have
Right.
that responsibility. And I
Right.
thought about it and I was like, man, it goes past my four walls. You
Mm-hmm.
know, that's
Mm-hmm.
one thing to do. Staying no fear. So I am going to take the time to educate myself on
Mm-hmm.
all the small, intricate details of voting in my county, what
Mm-hmm.
that looks like. Who am
Mm-hmm.
I voting for? Who's been in place to impact where we are
Right.
now? You know,
Mm-hmm.
and that takes time. So
Right.
sometimes it's easier to just, well, let me just post this picture, say I'm
Mm-hmm.
mad, and be done with it. But if we really want
Right.
to get real and we're
Mm-hmm.
saying I'm enraged, I want to make a difference, but I want to do it in
Mm-hmm.
a safe way, in a decent or
Mm-hmm.
effective way. Dr. Reba just gave us phenomenal tools to do
Mm-hmm.
so. You can call
Mm-hmm.
the Minnesota governor. You can call,
Mm-hmm.
I believe the mayor you said, or the attorney general.
Mm-hmm.
Look up resources on who you
Mm-hmm.
can call, do
Right.
your
So
due
the
diligence, because go
exactly.
ahead, yes, ma'am.
Oh yeah, I was just going to say the ACLU is a great website. So if you go to aclu-mn.org, they have a whole list of action steps. There's even a script that you can use when you call the county attorney's office. So there are definitely some concrete things that you can do to help bring about justice.
And can you say that again? I'm going to type that in the comments
Mm-hmm.
for those who missed it.
Mm-hmm. So that's
Uh-huh.
ACLU
C L
dash
U.
dash MN .org.
For tips on how you can help.
And
Awesome.
when you get to the main page, there's going to be a banner that says Call for Justice for George Floyd. And you click on that link and they give you all the action steps that you can take.
Awesome. That is phenomenal, Dr. Reba. Thank you so much for that. I just
Mm-hmm.
dropped that in the comments, aclu-mn.org for tips on how you can help. Justice for George. We are not selfless in this. I didn't want to make it all about that because I know some people are just
Mm-hmm.
mentally overwhelmed with that. But I did want
Mm-hmm.
to encourage you guys that there are positive ways that you can make a difference. I'm not saying that anybody is right or wrong. If the
Mm-hmm.
spirit leads you to be on the front lines, then by all means, we need our soldiers on the front lines as well. But for those of you who have family, who may not just feel that way to go on the front lines, there are other things you can do. So check out that website. And if you're like, I can't do anything right now, I'm so overwhelmed, I can't do
Mm-hmm.
anything. We're also going to talk about tips for you guys as well, because some
Mm-hmm.
grief is a thing. You
Mm-hmm.
know, when it happens,
Mm-hmm.
I directly see my family members, my father, my husband, my uncles, you know,
Mm-hmm.
it impacts me as if, God forbid that it was me, but God forbid that it was my sister, my brother, you
Right.
know. So for those who grief is something that is hard for them to deal with, what
Mm-hmm.
can they do? What resources should they look for?
Mm-hmm. And, you know, so kind of that first layer of resource would be reaching out to loved ones. So people that do love you, who care about you, who support you. But sometimes we need a little bit of extra help. So in those instances, it is important to seek out a counselor or a therapist or someone who can give you more formal tips or strategies for really navigating through some of the grief. And it's important to recognize that sometimes, just making it through another day is a triumph. So a lot of times we tend to think that, we're in quarantine, it's time to hustle, we have to start a new business and, do X, Y, and Z and lose 10 pounds. But really, if you can survive this period of time, that is saying something. So there are certainly resources out there for people who are seeking counselors or therapists. Psychologytoday.com is one kind of popular resource where you can find listings of psychotherapists. Therapy for Black Girls is one resource that has listings of psychotherapists who are culturally competent. And there are several other resources out there that really are able to help point you in the direction of someone who can be a benefit to you.
Awesome, awesome. So, family, wherever you find yourself on that spectrum, because there are so many emotions to feel, make sure you're taking care of yourself, your mental first,
Mm-hmm.
making sure um, you know what you can do and doing that. Social support, there are also apps. You can connect with someone via
Mm-hmm.
social media. There are online groups like Dr. Reba said, Therapy for Black Girls. Dr. Joy is phenomenal, and that resource that she provides that connects you with other therapists who want to work. Um, and that one is specifically with Black women, but just women as a whole. That's a great resource. And also, there's a place in Mesquite. So if you are in the Dallas area, Dallas Fort Worth area, and you're dealing with grief, there is a free grief center, Lighthouse for New Hope in Mesquite, Texas. Phenomenal resource there. So we want you guys to stay encouraged. This is definitely something that before we unloaded everything else about food and this and that and the other, some things we can't control what we see and what impacts us because it's everywhere. So when
Mm-hmm.
things bombard our lives, such as this, it's always good to have a game plan for that as well. So I wanted to provide you guys with
Mm-hmm.
that. Now, Dr. Reba, let's get into this food for our mood. I
All
love
right.
food. I love food. So I have been working in my health journey to get
Hmm.
on the
Hmm.
right track with food because it seems like it's almost like a love-hate relationship with food. You know,
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
love food and I want to be healthy and I am healthy.
Hmm.
But man, I love fried chicken. You know,
Right.
please don't miss me on the mac and cheese. You know, so we've grown up with this traditional food, this
Hmm.
soul food, you know, and
Hmm.
that's what we're used
Hmm.
to. How does just those generational ways of cooking food and preparing it, how does
Hmm.
that impact us?
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, so food is a source of comfort. Food is a source of community. So, we sit around a table and share meals together. So, oftentimes we kind of associate certain foods with times in our lives that were joyful. So, thinking about, grandma's mac and cheese or fried chicken at a holiday get together. So a lot of times what happens when we are feeling overwhelmed or if we're feeling stressed, we find that those comfort foods are ways that we kind of self-medicate feelings of overwhelm, or when we're having challenging times, food can find a point where you're able to make healthier meal choices and understand that there are other ways that you can get those needs met for comfort, for safety, for security without necessarily turning to foods that are unhealthy for us.
Yes, yes. And I think it's finding that balance and comfort, but almost like a little bit of discipline. You know, I think everything
Mm-hmm.
is phenomenal in moderation. I
Mm-hmm.
love root beer floats. They remind me
Uh-huh.
of my grandma. And I just, when I'm having a bad day, I'll just get me
Mm-hmm.
a pint of ice cream, which is definitely more than you're supposed to have, and a root beer float. But I just sit on the couch and I watch a movie,
Mm-hmm.
you know. But I have to have discipline to know that I can't do that 7 days out of the week, you
Right.
know.
Mm-hmm.
So definitely about finding that balance.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the other thing is taking those comfort foods and, like you said, finding a way to prepare them that's a healthy alternative. You don't have to
Mm-hmm.
cut it out altogether. I don't know if you're familiar with Tabitha Brown, but she did something
Uh-uh.
about carrots and she made carrot bacon,
Oh, okay.
you know?
Oh,
Yes,
funny.
and she's a vegan. So she made carrot bacon. And I'm like, how are y'all having carrot bacon and cauliflower buffalo wings? Like, I want to get on it. You know, that's phenomenal that there are other ways to
Uh,
incorporate these foods that we love. So, what would you say we should
mhm.
do to either switch how we prepare the foods or incorporate them differently?
Well, I think the important thing to recognize is that you want to eat foods that are as close to nature as possible. So, avoiding processed foods, avoiding foods that have a lot of added sugars. So, basically, if something comes in a bag, a box, or a can, it probably shouldn't go into your body. So, really thinking about this concept of shopping around the periphery of the grocery store. So, kind of the edge of the grocery store is where the vegetables are, it's where the meat counter is. And when you start to go inside the store, that's when you see the packaged foods. So the foods that are likely to have lots of preservatives or lots of sodium or lots of salt. So other things that are intended to preserve foods so that they can have a long shelf life. So if you can get into the habit of trying to make things from scratch, then that automatically really helps in keeping things healthy. And canned
Yes,
vegetables
and
aren't necessarily bad for you as long as they don't have a lot of sodium. So that's the big thing, is looking at the salt content in those canned vegetables. If you can do frozen, frozen would be a better choice than canned vegetables, but you
hmm,
definitely want to do what you can. So, I mean, we can't always make perfect choices, but we can always make better choices. So,
nice, nice. That was a phenomenal question.
mhm.
Um, Another thing that I wanted to know was, so you said no processed foods or anything like that, or making things from scratch. So I
Mhm.
know a few of my followers are busy moms. We're juggling
Mhm.
life at home. So now we are
Mhm.
full-time teachers,
Right.
along with part-time business owners and full-time
Mhm.
employees,
Mhm.
full-time whatever else we have. In addition to that, how can we
Mhm.
um, how can we make stuff from scratch, Dr. Reba, if we don't have any
Right.
time?
It's planning. That's where the planning comes in. So doing that food prep. So it's not an easy habit to get into, but really taking that afternoon, Sunday or Saturday, or even bringing the kids into it and making it family time, making it fun, to do that food prep together. So you have everything prepared for the week so that all you have to do is either throw it in the oven, or if you've cooked everything, then you just have to warm it up when it's time to eat it. So really being able to carve out that time. And the interesting thing about time is that we we make time for the things that are important. So we prioritize things that are
Mm-hmm.
most important to us. So, like most of us, nobody wakes up in the morning and says, you know what, I don't have time to go to work today. I'm just going to stay at home. We know that going to work is a priority, because if I don't go to work, I don't earn an income and I can't feed my family. So you have to really start thinking
Exactly.
about your health as that type of priority. I have to, make food that's healthy, that's going to sustain my body so that I don't get sick, so that I am there for my children in the long term.
Wow, wow. So this is a question, Dr. Reba, what foods are we eating that we may not know are really affecting our
Mm-hmm.
bodies in a negative
Mm-hmm.
way?
And I think a lot of the foods that are sort of labeled health foods aren't really that healthy. So when we look at the labels closely, there's a lot of added sugar in a lot of foods that are sort of marketed as health foods. So the green smoothies, for example, that everybody's drinking, or the kombuchas, you really want to look at those labels to see how much added sugar is in those foods. Yogurt as well. So oftentimes yogurt products just are full of sugar. Also, gluten containing grains, so gluten and gluten grains. For a lot of people, at least with emotional health problems, gluten can be a source of inflammation in the brain. So things like, breads and pastas and cereals. People talk about, whole grains being great. But if you are one of those people who happens to be sensitive to gluten, or if you're someone who has a wheat sensitivity, then those foods may not be very good for you. Same with dairy. So a lot of African Americans are lactose intolerant. So if you are eating a lot of yogurts or dairy products, that may not necessarily be a good choice for you. So it's really important to understand how those foods are impacting you. Um, Even things like nightshades can be. So those are things like tomatoes and peppers and things like that. So some people with arthritis, nightshades can kind of aggravate their arthritis. So there are all sorts of things that
Wow.
we put into our bodies that we might not necessarily know are impacting us negatively. So it's important to really have that understanding about food and nutrition, and do some experimentation to know how those foods are impacting your body. And I really like the Whole 30, if you've ever heard of that. So that's a 30-day food challenge where you eliminate the foods that are most likely to cause inflammation in the body. And then you gradually reintroduce one food group at a time, and see how your body responds. So if you find that, I start eating dairy again and I'm getting headaches and I'm getting achy, and my brain is cloudy, I can't think as clearly as usual, then you know that, you're somebody who has a dairy sensitivity. So maybe those are
Wow.
things that you shouldn't add back into your diet long term.
Yeah.
So you can get a lot of really good information by doing those steps. So,
Yes, that sounds great. Because I was just going to ask you. So, I mean, if somebody can't go to the doctor right now, how could
mhm,
they find out, what they're sensitive to? Just
mhm.
awareness, I think, is important. Some of us know things that we're
Mhm.
susceptible to. And if you don't know, if you may not personally be susceptible to it, you can
Mhm.
always look back and ask a family member or something, what health
Mhm.
concerns run in our family?
Mhm.
And for us, we just have a plethora of all that. We
Mhm.
have cancer, we have arthritis, we have
Mhm.
diabetes, all of these things that I'm trying to be very conscious of
Mhm.
now, so I don't have
Mhm.
to try to run around like crazy getting my health
Mhm.
together
Mhm.
in my 40s, 50s, 60s and above.
Right.
I
Right.
don't even want to look at health problems
Mhm.
at those ages. And even if you are having health problems,
Mhm.
a lot of the things that you eat
Mhm.
can help you turn those things around. They
Mhm.
really, really can. So
Mhm.
the whole 30, I think, would be a great way to
Mhm.
incorporate without you necessarily going through all these tests and tricks to find out, okay, what am I
Mhm.
really sensitive to? Like, I know
Exactly.
when I eat pork, my
Mhm.
stomach hurts,
Mhm. Mhm.
so it's just being really aware of what you
Mhm.
eat,
Mhm.
and then maybe how your stomach or your body feels afterwards,
Mhm.
or journaling to see how you felt that day. If I
Exactly.
journal every
Mhm.
night and I see in the morning, like, okay, I put down everything I ate, how many waters I drank,
Mhm.
and then my mood was still a little off, it's like, okay, you did eat
Right.
that processed food
Mhm.
today
Mhm.
versus, maybe a nice shake or a smoothie homemade.
Right. Mhm.
So that is a phenomenal tip. Whole 30. I had never heard of that. So I'm trying
Mhm.
to say it for those who missed it.
Uh-huh.
That's a good
Mhm.
one.
Mhm.
Um, so as far as our intake,
Mhm.
fruits and vegetables, we kind of have
Mhm.
heard how many we're supposed to have and things like that. Give us a few tips on fruits and vegetables, the best way to cook them, the best
Mhm.
ones to eat.
Mhm. Um, Vegetables whenever
Oh,
possible.
I think you're
So
frozen,
that sort
Doctor.
of maintains the nutritional content in the
I'm sorry. Can
vegetables.
you go back
So,
again? Oh, go ahead.
uh, oh, sure. So if you can steam your vegetables, that kind of maintains the nutritional content. So if you're boiling vegetables or if you're kind of frying them too long, then that can sort of leach out all the really important nutrients that you want to get. You want to get a nice amount of green leafy vegetables so that you can get enough folate and magnesium and other really important minerals that are important for wellness. And then otherwise, it's really you want to think about the colors. So it's not necessarily individual vegetables. You want to mix things up. So the colors that are present in vegetables contain something called phytonutrients. So those are nutrients
Phytonutrients.
that have all sorts of antioxidant properties and other healing properties. So you want to try to get as many colors as possible. That's especially important now in sort of the age of COVID, because we want to do everything that we can to minimize inflammation in our bodies. And as Black women, we already have higher circulating levels of cortisol, which is a stress hormone, and that can make us more prone to really being to having longer term kind of chronic health issues like diabetes or heart disease. Can make it really difficult to lose weight when we have like a lot of these stress hormones circulating around. So we want to do everything that we can to combat that by using food as one of those ways that we are able to deal with that. So kind of eating those colorful foods and a variety of colorful foods is really important. And what that variety also does is it helps our gut as well. So we have all sorts of bacteria in our gut. And those
Mm-hmm.
bacteria are important also in helping regulate all sorts of processes in the body. So when that gut bacteria balance is off, then people are more likely to have problems with their emotional health, with their physical health, with inflammation. So really using that colorful diet can also really help improve your gut health as well.
So Raquel has a question. What is your
And
opinion about bone broth?
bone broth is great. So it's has a lot of what we call collagen. So that's a really soothing, kind of soothing for your stomach. Now, some people get kind of agitated with bone broth. So there are some people. So there's something called glutamate in bone broth, and glutamate is what we call an excitatory neurotransmitter. So some people can't kind of tolerate glutamate, so they get sort of antsy or agitated when they eat foods that have sort of a high glutamate content. But if you're not one of those people, bone broth is great.
Nice, nice, nice. And you were saying something about the probiotics. I had a talk with a nutritionist, and she said that 95% of, I can't remember, and it just went away, but I know that your 95% of something is located in your gut area. Does that sound?
Probably serotonin, maybe is what they were
Yes,
saying.
serotonin,
Hmm.
and so help us out. So your gut is really important. What can you do? You were talking about the bacteria. I know probiotics.
Hmm.
Guys, we're not experts here. That's why I bring the doctors on so they can help us out because we're like, the something, it's called something with the S. And they're like, oh, it's maybe 4 or 5 things. So y'all are phenomenal, phenomenal. So back to the gut and the bacteria in the gut. How do you kind of regulate that? Do you use probiotics? I mean,
Ideally, food. So probiotics are great,
okay.
but probiotics help in the moment. So you have to kind of
Mm,
continuously use probiotics if that's sort of how you're regulating your GI system. Now, prebiotics, so that's the food that actually feeds the bacteria. You get prebiotics from those fruits and vegetables and fiber sources that you feed yourself through those fruits and vegetables. So by eating that, fermented foods as well. So by eating a food, eating a diet that's sort of rich in those prebiotic sources helps sort of seed your gut so that you naturally have kind of a good balance of bacteria. And so that ultimately you
okay.
may not need to rely on a probiotic for good gut health. But certainly probiotics can be helpful, especially in the beginning phases if you are sort of revamping your diet or starting down a new path of trying to incorporate more variety into your diet.
Perfect, perfect. So fruits and vegetables ultimately will make the difference in
Hmm.
our gut
And
health.
fiber. Hmm.
And your fiber. But
Hmm.
if you're new to your journey, those
Hmm.
probiotics can definitely help fill in the gaps of a few of
Hmm.
those things as you get
Hmm.
started.
Hmm.
Um, Someone said meats. Let's talk about meats. Beef, pork, chicken, fish. Chicken's my favorite. Fish is a close second. I don't really eat pork unless it's my mama's pork chops, but I won't turn them down. So, where should we be with meat? Some people say we should eat it. Where are we at with that?
And as a psychiatrist, I often see people who are vegan or vegetarian who have really who really struggle with depression or anxiety because they're deficient in certain nutrients that we can get through animal products. So if you are someone who's going to avoid meat, so if you're vegan, if you're a vegetarian, it's really important to get good sources of complete protein, and also important to get good sources of vitamin B12. So B12 is, we tend to get it mostly from animal products. So animal products tend to be very sort of good sources of that. So you just want to make sure that you're really being intentional about getting what you
Yeah,
need. And if not, you may need to supplement with the B12 supplement so that you are getting everything that you need from your diet.
yeah, yeah. And so, protein, what other ways can we get protein? I know we can get protein
Mm-hmm.
from eggs,
Mm-hmm.
we can get protein from meat. Are there
Mm-hmm.
any other options, ways
Mm-hmm.
to get protein?
Mm-hmm. So certainly things like nuts, things like seeds, grains, so legumes, so beans can be a source of protein. Spirulina, hemp
Mhm.
seeds, nutritional yeast can also be a source of protein as well. So there are protein sources that are vegetarian or vegan sources. You just have to kind of know what to look for and where to look. So.
And find them. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Awesome. And you briefly touched on fiber. Um, Outside of fruits and vegetables, are there other ways to
Mm-hmm.
get fiber,
Mm-hmm.
other
And
places to look for
also
that?
similarly, so beans, so legumes are kind of a good source of fiber. That's one of a kind of one of the good sources for fiber. And also things like nuts and seeds and grains also can give you fiber sources. So.
And very quickly, I do know that 8 out of 10 adults are fiber deficient. And some people don't even recognize the importance of fiber. Really quickly, Dr. Reba,
Mm-hmm.
how important is fiber to our diet?
Mm-hmm.
What does fiber do in our diet?
Mm-hmm. So fiber helps with our digestive health. So it kind of helps sort of move things through our gastrointestinal tract and sort of stops us from being constipated. It sort of clears things out. So we're less likely to get things like gastrointestinal cancers, cholesterol. So having a high fiber diet actually reduces the amount of cholesterol that's in your bloodstream. So getting adequate fiber is important from a heart healthy standpoint as well. Fiber can help us regulate our blood sugar and even weight management. So when we have enough fiber sort of slows down digestion, so that helps us feel full. So fiber is definitely important.
Awesome. And vitamins and minerals. We have heard so much about vitamins and minerals, especially during this time. We have people who have never been taking vitamins and minerals before, taking 15, 16 different supplements, trying to make sure they fill in those gaps. Because we truly see now, like, health is your wealth. Money isn't out here saving people, you know.
Exactly.
Health is your wealth. That's where it all starts. You can't even enjoy your wealth if you're not healthy.
Right.
So as far as vitamins, vitamin C, what is the importance of vitamin C? How much do we need, and where can we get it from?
I think
Can
I
you hear me?
lost you for a bit. You were
Okay,
frozen there.
no worries. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So as far as our vitamins, I'll list one off and you can say why it's important, how
Okay.
much we need of it, and where we can find it. So
Okay.
vitamin C.
So vitamin C is a really important, what we call antioxidant. So vitamin C helps us. So there's something called oxidative stress that can happen in the body. And when we're exposed to toxins or other things that sort of signal danger in the body, that detoxification process makes what we call free radicals. And those can cause a lot of damage in the body. So vitamin C and other antioxidants help sort of neutralize those free radicals so that we have less oxidative stress in our bodies. So citrus products are kind of rich sources of vitamin C. That would probably be the easiest source of vitamin C. Another resource that I want to make sure that I share is something called nutritiondata.self.com. And what it is it's a website where you can actually put in the nutrient that you're looking for, and it'll list the foods that are most, that have the highest content of that particular nutrient. So if you're looking for foods that are rich in vitamin C, you just type in vitamin C in that website and it generates a list of foods that have that high content. So it's a really great resource.
Wow.
Now, in the time of COVID, recommendations for sort of just sort of immune health with vitamin C would be anywhere from 1,000 to 3,000 milligrams of vitamin C daily. Now, some people can't tolerate up to 3,000 milligrams because vitamin C can act as a laxative. So some people might find that they get loose stools with higher amounts of vitamin C. But around 1,000 milligrams to 2,000 milligrams per day is a good source. And often to get that amount, you might have to supplement. So.
Yeah, because it's about, would that be about like 8 to 10 oranges or something?
That I'm not sure offhand. Probably more.
Okay. Probably more. I think they said something about 8 to 10. But do not quote me because, again, I am not the doctor. Right. Okay?
So, right. And we can go to self-nutrition data and put it in there.
Exactly. Did I put it in there correctly? Is it nutritiondata.self.com? I want to make sure it's in there correctly.
Yep, that's perfect.
phenomenal. So if you want to look up and fill in the gaps on anything, look for food data, like Dr. Reba said, nutritiondata.self.com. Vitamin D, I know that's the big thing. We're not getting enough sun, especially those who are of a darker complexion. We have melanin, and that kind of blocks us from absorbing vitamin D as effective as those of a lighter complexion. Am I correct?
Right. So African Americans tend to have lower circulating levels of the type of vitamin D that's usually checked by laboratories is more of a storage form of vitamin D, whereas the active form of vitamin D is a different form. So that form's a little bit more expensive to test, and we don't generally test that as a screening. And the issue with that is, as Black people, in Africa or in places that have a lot of sunlight, so sunlight is how you generate that sort of active vitamin D, we don't really need to store it because we're getting a lot of it naturally from sunlight. Whereas someone who is more of a northern climate, it would make sense for them to store their vitamin D because there are long periods of time where they wouldn't be exposed to sunlight. So African Americans often do have very low forms of that storage vitamin D because we just don't have a need to, evolutionarily, we just haven't had a need to store vitamin D. So that's why it's more common for us to have such low levels when it's checked in that storage form. As far as sources or why vitamin D is important, so vitamin D is really important also for immune health, for bone health. So a whole host of functions in the body are kind of dependent on vitamin D. And one common source of vitamin D is dairy products. But again, oftentimes people are kind of sensitive to dairy products. So it can be a little bit more tricky for those people to get vitamin D. So it's important to look into other sources or even supplementation for vitamin D if you are someone who doesn't really do dairy.
Yeah, and it's kind of different because we're all in the house now versus when we were outside, right? So does sunlight, is that may be a weird way to say it, but does sunlight kind of affect your mood as well?
It can. So people can actually have something called seasonal affective disorder. So that's when when the days get shorter in the winter and people have sort of less exposure to sunlight, they can have kind of depression and feel sluggish and have all sorts of kind of mood related problems that tend to go away in the summertime or in the spring when the days start getting longer and there's more sunlight available. So definitely the the amount of sunlight that we're exposed to can definitely impact our mood.
Okay, nice, nice. I had heard that and I was like, well, I guess it kind of makes, you feel good when you're outside and the sun is shining and it's on your skin and it's not too hot. And you only we get like 2 days of that in Texas and Georgia. So those 2 days where it's not too hot, definitely go outside and enjoy that. I know a lot of people have been talking about zinc and elderberry. They're two different things, but as far as the zinc and like copper, people were saying that minerals was something that we should start looking at as well. So can you touch on that point for me?
So sure. So zinc is a mineral that's important in a whole host of metabolic processes in the body. So we need zinc as what we call a cofactor. So for an enzyme to work, so an enzyme takes one molecule and turns it into another molecule. In order for that enzyme to work, it needs a cofactor. So zinc is a cofactor for literally hundreds of processes in the body. Zinc also is really important in immune health. So having low zinc levels can really make your ability to fight off infections a little bit more difficult. So zinc is something that is really important to have enough of, especially if we are trying to minimize our risk of infection. Elderberry is, so it's a botanical that has been shown, at least for like influenza, to limit the risk of developing influenza. There's a bit of controversy with elderberry and COVID-19 because the concern about elderberry is that it can sort of activate the immune system. So the worry that people had, at least sort of early on, was that elderberry might activate something called the cytokine storm, where your immune system just gets super over regulated. And I don't know that that's necessarily panned out, but it's one of those things where the recommendation is, you could certainly take elderberry as a preventative, but if you were to actually develop an infection, then it's probably a lot of people recommend stopping elderberry if you have an active infection. So.
Okay, that is definitely good to know. That is definitely good to know. I know we see a lot of products that pop up like sea moss and
Oh yeah,
elderberry and stuff like that. And it's just always important to do your due diligence. All of these things, people, I know they're posting things about vitamins and all this stuff, and that's phenomenal. Find what works best for you. Make sure that you are aware of your body, where your deficiencies are. And definitely, if you need to look into supplementation and filling in those gaps, by all means, do that. But don't heavily rely just on that. There will have to be a lifestyle change that will need to take place in order for it to be something that is long lasting. So, like Dr. Reba said, from what we eat to how we eat it, how we prepare it, these things are daily changes that we can make that can compound into a healthier lifestyle. Very quickly, we have about 9 minutes, but another thing that we have not really been highlighting as much as I think we should is sleep and exercise. These are things that you will need to incorporate to make a lifestyle change as well. So, Dr. Reba, how important is being active and exercising, but also having rest and sleep?
So both are extremely important. So when I work with patients, the framework that I use is SMART, so SMART, and that has to do with all of those lifestyle factors that we have control over. So S is about sleep, M is movement, A is having an awareness practice, R is recognition, so kind of recognition of identity, knowing who you are and your purpose in the world. And the T is about tailoring inputs into your body. So what is it that you're feeding yourself? So all of those aspects are kind of equally important in making sure that we're as healthy as possible. So SMART just makes it easy to kind of remember those things that we need to do for ourselves. And when we're sleeping, that's when our brain really is able to repair itself. It's able to do some housekeeping when we're in those deeper restorative phases of sleep. So there are all sorts of proteins that can accumulate in our brains. And when we're in those sort of deep phases of sleep, those proteins get sort of cleared away. So people who are sleep deprived actually have a higher risk of developing things like Alzheimer's or other dementias later in life. When you're sleep deprived, it can make it really difficult to kind of consolidate memories. So if you've ever, crammed for a test and stayed up all night, you remember it long enough to regurgitate it for the test, but 2 days later, you have no idea what you studied. That's why. So you need to really have that rest to be able to consolidate those memories. And you need a consistent period of sleep. So sometimes people, sleep, 2 hours here, 3 hours there, and feel like you can have sort of a cumulative effect, but it does need to be sort of a consistent, unbroken amount of sleep. Ideally 7 to 9 hours of sort of unbroken sleep at night is good. Movement is important because we can actually, studies have shown that people who exercise just 20 minutes per day, 4 days per week, can get as much benefit as an antidepressant if they have mild to moderate depression. So we have this potent internal pharmacy that we can make use of by moving our bodies, by making the right choices with how we're feeding ourselves, with getting enough sleep. So all of those lifestyle factors really are extremely important in making sure that we're as healthy as possible.
And Dr. Reba, that was amazing. The numbers that you said, you had kind of went out, but I want you to say those numbers again, just in case it didn't pick up. They were really powerful.
So 20 minutes of exercise, so aerobic exercise, so exercise that gets your heart rate up 4 times per week is as effective as an antidepressant for people with mild to moderate depression.
That's amazing. That's
Mm-hmm.
amazing. And, guys, take the time and the due diligence. And Raquel, I'm going to make sure we answer your question. But, guys, make sure you take the time to do the due diligence to find professionals like Dr. Reba who can teach you things in a manner that make you feel not only comfortable, but like, I didn't know that. I
Mm-hmm.
could supplement an antidepressant if I start working out 20 minutes a day, 4 times a week. Look for people who have solutions beyond giving you 20, 30 pills. A lot of these things, if you look for the right professional, they can tell you what foods you need to be taking. I've done it before, and I found that breads, my body doesn't break down breads well. It affects my mood and my behavior. So that's something that I try to stay away from. So awareness is a powerful tool. Once you are aware of your body and your feelings, a lot of these things, you really have power to take control
Right.
over your future, over your health, because you know. And now that you know, your eyes are open. So it's up to you at that point, because you are aware, to make these smart, responsible decisions. Not all the time. Enjoy ice cream, enjoy life, but be healthy, create a healthy habit. It starts with us breaking chains and making sure that we know, we're doing what we can to be healthy and make a difference. It starts with you. It truly does. So, Dr. Reba, Raquel did have a question before we go, and she said, if you're taking vitamins, do you need to take minerals
And that's
as
a
far as
question.
supplements?
And that's a hard question to answer without kind of knowing exactly what you're taking. And it also depends on what you're eating, diet wise. So it's one of those things I couldn't really give sort of a blanket answer, because some people don't need any supplementation, whereas others do. It can be instructive to do some laboratory testing to see exactly where you are in terms of what your levels are in terms of some of those key nutrients, so vitamins and minerals as well, because some people really are deficient in a lot of minerals. So at least in America, magnesium, zinc also tends to be one of those things that people tend to not have enough of. So those are things that may need to be supplemented if you don't have adequate amounts of those.
Exactly, exactly. And I mean, Raquel, like Dr. Reba said, that's something that you can take laboratory tests to find. I take a multivitamin that covers pretty much that entire spectrum. Fruits and vegetables it has in there are my daily servings amounts. It also has those phytonutrients that Dr. Reba was talking about, as well as a few minerals in there to balance things out, like zinc and copper. So I can DM you directly about that and we can discuss that further. But definitely, take the time to see if you need to be taking supplements and filling in the gaps, because if you are deficient and the food that you've been taking it has you kind of at that threshold, but not exactly where you need to be, supplementation might be that little small thing that makes the difference with filling in the gaps. So, we are out of time, guys. But Dr. Reba, I want to thank you so much. I know that you've provided so much value. Lives are healthier and better off because of the words that you said on this live. I agree. This is my health journey gets better and better, guys. I hope you appreciate these guests that I have on there, because I really want to just bridge that gap for us and bring these phenomenal experts who know, so we can do the best that we can with the proper knowledge, not the influencer knowledge, but the real, I went to school for years in order to help serve you guys. So, Dr. Reba, do you have any takeaways that you want to give us?
Well, I think it's just important to recognize that you do have the power to make healthy choices and to take control of your life. So I think oftentimes we're under the or at least the media would like us to think that we need something outside of ourselves in order to be healthy. But we have the ability to take control of our lives and really become stewards of our own health and architects of our own destiny.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you guys so much for tuning in.